We're looking at quadratic form today, which means that we have raised to a higher exponent. Okay, so with the basics, we're going to do short method. And what I mean by that is this a value is technically a 1, so we can do short method, which says that I want to multiply it to 20, and I want to add to 12. Okay, so if you're not sure what multiplies to 20 and adds to 12, make a list. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. And you say, which one of those gives me 12? Well, 10 and 2 do. Because it's the short method, we can go straight to our answer. So this is going to be x squared plus 10 and x squared plus 2. These guys are called our factors. But the point of what we're doing today is that we want to solve these. So we're going to take these and set them equal to 0. So when I do my first one, I'm going to subtract 10 to the other side. And I get that x squared equals negative 10. And then I'm going to take the square root of negative 10. Remember, you need that plus or minus. Okay, so here's the important thing that you need to remember. That guy right there. That says that I'm going to bring out an I, because anytime you have a negative under the square root, it's an imaginary number, and keep it as the square root of 10. So these are my first two answers. And again, there's two answers there because it's plus or minus. This one, I'm going to subtract 2. Then I'm going to take the square root of negative 2. And again, you have that negative sign. So I get plus or minus I root 2. So those are your 4 answers for the first one, because you have the plus or the minus. This one's also going to be short method, the second one here. So I'm saying what multiplies to negative 12 that adds to negative 4. Okay, when I say what does that, you could make a list of things that give you 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. The combination that's going to give me negative 4 is to do negative 6 and positive 2. So since it's short method and our a value is 1, we can skip to x squared minus 6 and x squared plus 2. Those again are our factors, so we're going to set those guys equal to 0. And solve them. We're going to add 6 here, so we get x squared equals 6. To undo a squared, we're going to take the square root. So I have plus or minus the square root of 6. So then you say, can I break this down into any couples and pairs? Nope, no couples, no pairs. So this is our answer. This one, we're subtracting it, and we get negative 2. So then we're going to take plus or minus the square root of negative 2. We have that guy under there. So that's going to be equal to I root 2. Plus or minus I root 2, and that's our second set. Okay, so when you have the short method, it's pretty easy. So let's look at a couple where our a value is bigger than 1. So this is going to be the long method. Okay, so when we're looking at this one, same sort of thing where we make our x, we take a times c to get 12. Our b value is negative 8. So then we say, well, what's going to go into that? What's going to do that? So negative 6 and negative 2 are going to give us negative 8 and multiply to 12. So remember, with the long method, we're going to bring down 3m to the 4th, and we're going to bring down the plus 4. In the middle, we're going to have negative, oops, let's fix that. We're going to have negative 6m squared minus 2m squared. Okay, why do we have the squareds? Because our middle term is squared. So our factors that we put in also have to be squared. So we're going to group this and say, what can I take out of both of them? What divides both of them? Well, 3m squared divides both of them. And what's left when you divide? You're going to have m squared minus 2. Okay, so then you're going to do the same thing in the second set. You're going to say what multiplies or what divides negative 2m squared and 4 and negative 2. So what's left when I do that is m squared minus 2. So our factors that we're going to set equal to 0 are the 3m squared minus 2 equals 0, and the m squared minus 2 equals 0. So we're going to solve both of these. Add 2, divide by 3, and now I want to take the square root. So remember that when you take the square root, Obviously, it's going to be plus or minus. But you have to rationalize the denominator. And what that means is you multiply by root 3 over root 3. Whatever your denominator is, that's what you're going to multiply by. So I go straight across the top, and that's going to give me the square root of 6. I go straight across the bottom, and I get the square root of 9. Well, what's the point of this? Well, the point is that the denominator can't be a square root. So I get plus or minus the square root of 6, and I know that this becomes 3 because that's the square root of 9. So this is my first two answers. Okay, so I go back up to this other one where I'm going to add 2, and I have that m squared equals 2. Then I'm going to take the square root of that, and that's my answer. So you have your 4 answers right there. Okay, so number 4 is going to work the exact same way. You're saying in this one, what multiplies to negative 56 that adds to 1. Our 56 comes from multiplying those two together. When you do that, you're going to get 7 and 8 are how you would get 1 by making that a negative. So you're going to drop down your first, 2x to the 4th. You're going to drop down your last. And in the middle, you're going to put negative 7x squared plus 8x. Grouping these, I say what divides 2x to the 4th and negative 7x squared? Well, in that case, I can take out just an x squared, and I'm going to be left with 2x squared minus 7. Here, what divides 8 and negative 28? 4 divides those both nicely. I forgot my squared. So I have x squared minus 7. So now I'm going to go ahead and set my factors equal to 0. The 2x squared minus 7 equals 0. And the other one is x squared plus 4 equals 0. Okay, so my first one, I'm going to add 7. I think I'm going to add 7. Okay, and then I'm going to divide by 2. Okay, so now I have to take the square root. Same situation where you're going to multiply by whatever is in the denominator. So when you do that, this is going to give you the square root of 14 over the square root of 4. Well, you know that the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 14 can't be broken down. So this is your first two answers. Then I'm going to take this blue one over here so you can see it a little bit better. So I have x squared plus 4 equals 0. I subtract 4 from both sides and get negative 4. Then I'm going to take the square root. Well, the square root of negative 4 is plus or minus 2i. Okay? All right, so the greatest common factor ones are going to be the exact same. I'm only going to do one of these because they're kind of the same situation with that. Okay, so I look at this one and I see that I have a greatest common factor of 5. So if you take 5 out in front, you're going to be left with 20x to the 4th plus 29x squared plus 6. So now I'm saying what multiplies to 120 that adds to 29. So if you don't know that, then you make a list of all the things that give you 120. Okay, so 1 times 120, 2 times 60, 3 times 40, 4 times 30, 5 times 24. Okay, that's the one I want, 5 times 24. 5 times 24. So now I still have to go long method with this. I'm going to leave this 5 alone for the time being, and I'm going to come back to it. So I have, I'm trying to get one of my markers to work. 20x to the 4th, I plug in the 5x squared, I plug in the 24x squared and 6. So now I group. I say what divides 20x to the 4th and 5x squared? Well, 5x squared does, and that leaves me with 4x squared plus 1. This one is 6, and what's going to be left is 4x squared plus 1. Okay, so setting these equal to 0. 5x squared plus 6 equals 0. You're going to subtract 6. You're going to divide by 5. And now you got to take square roots. So I have plus or minus the square root of negative 6 over the square root of negative 5, or positive 5. So you have to rationalize the denominator here. Multiply by root 5 over root 5. So I go straight across the top, and I get the square root of negative 30. And on the bottom, I get the square root of 25. Well, the square root of 30 breaks down into 10 and 3, 5 and 2, so that has no pairs. But what I can do is take that I out. So I have plus or minus I root 30. And on the bottom, the square root of 25 is 5. So those are your first two answers. Then my other one that I'm doing, I'm going to subtract 1 and divide by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to having 1/4. So now I'm going to take the square root of negative 1 over 4. Well, the square root of negative 1 is I, and the square root of 4 is 2. So that's your answer, okay? Because you knew that this had a square root of I and this had a square root of 2. You don't have to rationalize the denominator because they're two perfect things already. All right, so those are your two answers to that.